The morning sky over New Serenity burned red with falling debris. Colony Administrator Zephlin pressed her six-fingered hands against the observation window of the command center, watching another piece of their orbital defense platform streak across the horizon like a dying star. "How many ships do they have left?" she asked, her voice barely steady. Commander Veltar looked up from his tactical display, his large eyes reflecting the flashing red warning lights. 3 escort vessels, Administrator. The Peaceful Dawn lost her shields an hour ago. The Gentle, Breeze is running on backup power. Only the Serene Hope still has full combat capability. Zephlin felt her stomach twist. 3 ships against the endless swarm approaching their world. The Kethvar had appeared at the edge of their system 5 days ago, a dark cloud of bioships that blotted out the stars. They consumed everything in their path, turning entire worlds into feeding grounds for their hive mind. "Send another message to the Galactic Council," she ordered. "Tell them we need immediate military assistance." "Administrator, we have sent 14 messages in the past 3 days," Veltar replied gently. "The responses are all the same." Zephlin knew what those responses said. The Morvani expressed deep sympathy, but explained their fleet was committed to protecting their own borders. The Ashanti offered to accept refugees at their distant worlds, a journey that would take months they did not have. The Kethalorians promised to bring the matter before the Emergency Council, which could convene in 2 weeks if all members agreed. 2 weeks. They would all be dead in 2 days. The communication panel chirped with an incoming message. Veltar activated it, and the familiar face of High Counselor Mordain appeared on the screen. The elderly Morvani looked genuinely distressed. "Administrator Zephlin, I wish I had better news." Mordain began, his whiskers twitching with anxiety. "The Council has met in emergency session, but I'm afraid the result is the same. No member species can spare military vessels at this time. The Kethvar threat is too great, and our losses would be unacceptable." Zephlin finished bitterly. "Yes, I understand. However," Mordain continued, "the Ashanti have increased their refugee allocation. They can now accept up to 50,000 of your people. If you begin evacuation immediately." 50,000. Zephlin's voice was flat. "We have 800,000 colonists on New Serenity." The silence stretched between them. Finally, Mordain spoke again. "I am truly sorry, Administrator. Perhaps if you had more time." The connection ended. Zephlin stared at the blank screen for a long moment before turning back to the window. In the distance, she could see the bright flashes of weapons fire as her remaining ships fought desperately against impossible odds. "Commander," she said, quietly, "prepare a general distress call. Send it on all frequencies, all known channels. Someone out there might help us." Veltar hesitated. "Administrator, we have already contacted every member of the Galactic Council. There are no other major civilizations in this sector. Then we send it to the minor ones, the primitives, the species we have never bothered to contact." Zephlin turned to face him, her expression determined. "Send it to everyone, Veltar. Everyone." The commander nodded and began working at his console. What should the message say? Zephlin thought for a moment. "This is Colony Administrator Zephlin of New Serenity, broadcasting on all frequencies. Our world is under attack by the Kethvar swarm. Our defenses are failing. We have 800,000 civilian lives at stake, including 60,000 children. We are requesting immediate military assistance from any species capable of providing it. We will share all our technological resources with anyone who helps us. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help now." Veltar recorded the message and began transmitting it across every known communication channel. The signal spread outward from New Serenity, carrying their desperate plea across the galaxy. On the bridge of the Serene Hope, Captain Lindai watched her tactical screen with growing despair. The Kethvar bioships moved like living things, which they were. Each vessel was grown rather than built, shaped by the collective will of the hive mind into instruments of consumption and destruction. "Captain, they are breaking through our defensive line," her weapons officer reported. "The Peaceful Dawn is not responding to communications." Lindai closed her eyes for a moment. The Peaceful Dawn had been her sister ship, commanded by her old friend Len. They had served together for 15 years, protecting peaceful colonies like New Serenity from pirates and raiders. They had never faced anything like this. "Pull back to the inner defense perimeter," she ordered. "We will make our stand at the orbital stations." But even as she gave the command, Lindai knew it was hopeless. The orbital stations had been built to handle small threats. not a full HFY swarm. They would buy time, perhaps a few more hours, but the outcome was inevitable. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy on a world called Terra Prime, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the communication center of Fleet Command, listening to an intercepted transmission. The alien language was translated by the computer, though the desperation in the speaker's voice needed no translation. "Admiral, should we forward this to Earth Command?" asked Lieutenant Torres, the communications officer on duty. Chen studied the tactical display showing the location of New Serenity. It was far outside human space in a sector they had barely explored. The 3rd Expeditionary Fleet was stationed at Terra Prime after finishing a brutal campaign against rebels in the Centauri system. Her ships and crews were tired, battle-scarred, and operating far from their supply lines. "Ma'am?" Torres prompted. Chen had heard desperate pleas before. During the Mars Rebellion, she'd been a junior officer when the outer colonies called for help that never came. She remembered the reports afterward, the body counts, the lists of civilians who died while politicians debated and bureaucrats filed reports. "No," she said finally. "Do not forward this to Earth Command." Torres looked confused. "Ma'am?" "Instead, send a message to all ship commanders in the 3rd Fleet. Tell them we have a Code 7 humanitarian crisis. Full fleet meeting in Conference Room Alpha in 1 hour." Chen paused, making a decision that would change everything. "And Lieutenant, prep the fleet for immediate departure." "Admiral, we do not have authorization for deployment outside human space," Torres said carefully. "Sometimes you do what is right, not what is authorized," Chen replied. "Besides, they did not ask for human help specifically. They asked for help from anyone who could provide it. We can provide it." As Torres began sending messages to the fleet commanders, Chen looked at the star map again. New Serenity was 3 days away at maximum burn. According to the alien transmission, they had maybe 2 days before the HFY overran their defenses. It would be close. But humans had always been good at close calls. In Conference Room Alpha an hour later, Chen faced her ship commanders. These were hard men and women, veterans of the worst fighting humanity had seen in decades. They had lost friends in the Centauri campaign, seen entire cities burned by rebels who showed no mercy to civilians. "The situation is simple," Chen began, displaying the tactical information about New Serenity. 800,000 civilians are about to die. No one else is coming to help them. We can reach them in time, but it means going against orders and facing an enemy we have never fought before. Captain Rodriguez of the destroyer Indomitable spoke first. "What do we know about these HFY? Bioships hive mind. They consume entire worlds. Think of them as space locusts with weapons." Chen looked around the room. "This will not be easy. We will be outnumbered, outgunned, and operating without support." Commander Park of the heavy cruiser Defiant leaned forward. "Admiral, with respect, when has that ever stopped us?" Murmurs of agreement filled the room. Chen felt a familiar surge of pride in her people. This was what made humans different. When faced with impossible odds and certain death, other species calculated probabilities and filed reports. Humans rolled up their sleeves and got to work. "All right then," she said. "Prep for immediate departure. We leave in 6 hours." Back on New Serenity, the last of the orbital defense stations exploded in a brilliant fireball. The HFY swarm moved closer to the planet, their bioships pulsing with hunger. Zephlin stood in the command center watching the end approach. They had tried everything, called everyone, begged anyone who would listen. No one was coming, or so she thought. Captain Maria Rodriguez stood on the bridge of her destroyer Indomitable, watching the organized chaos of fleet preparation through the main viewport. Around Terra Prime, 37 warships were making ready for an unauthorized rescue mission that could end all their careers. She did not care. Her communications officer looked up from his station. "Captain, we are getting volunteers from every ship in the sector. The Yorktown is requesting permission to join the fleet even though they are scheduled for engine maintenance." Rodriguez smiled grimly. "Tell them if they can keep up, they are welcome." She opened the ship-wide communication channel. "All hands, this is the captain. In 4 hours, we depart for New Serenity to face an enemy called the HFY swarm. Our mission is simple. Save 800,000 civilians from extinction. The enemy outnumbers us, outguns us, and has been winning wars since before humans reached the stars." She paused, looking out at the fleet assembling around them. They have never fought humans before. They are about to learn why that matters. All departments report readiness in 30 minutes. Across the fleet, similar scenes played out on every ship. On the heavy cruiser Defiant, Commander James Park addressed his crew in the hangar bay. The men and women before him had seen action in every major human conflict of the past decade. They bore scars from plasma burns, shrapnel wounds, and battles fought in the cold vacuum of space. "I will not lie to you," Park said. "The odds are bad. The enemy is unknown. We have no backup, no support, and no way home if this goes wrong. Earth Command will probably court-martial us all if we survive," a voice called out from the crowd. "So a typical Tuesday then, sir?" Laughter rippled through the hangar. Park grinned. "Exactly, Sergeant. Exactly." On the flagship Resolute, Admiral Chen reviewed the latest intelligence reports with her staff. The information on the HFY was limited but disturbing. They were an ancient hive mind that had consumed dozens of worlds over the past 1,000 years. Their bioships could repair themselves, adapt to enemy tactics, and seemed to feel no fear or hesitation. "Admiral," her intelligence officer said, "the tactical analysis suggests we are facing a force at least 5 times our size. Standard doctrine would recommend we request reinforcements before engaging." "Standard doctrine assumes we have time for reinforcements," Chen replied. "How long before the colony falls?" "Based on their defensive capabilities and the rate of HFY advance, less than 36 hours, Chen nodded. "Then we fight with what we have. What about our supply situation?" "Limited," her logistics officer admitted. "We can carry enough ammunition for 1 major engagement, maybe 2 if we are careful. Food and water for 2 weeks. Medical supplies are adequate but not excessive." "It will have to do." Chen turned to address the full staff. "Gentlemen, ladies, we are about to undertake the most important mission in human history, not because of its strategic value but because of what it represents. Today we prove that humanity keeps its promises, even to people we have never met." The final ship to join the fleet was the medical frigate Mercy. Its captain, Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, had volunteered her ship and crew despite the obvious dangers. The Mercy was designed to treat wounded after battles, not to sail into the middle of one. "Doctor, this is not a medical ship's fight," Admiral Chen had told her during their private communication. "With respect, Admiral, wherever humans fight, medical ships belong," Hayes had replied. "Besides, those colonists will need medical attention when this is over. We should be there." Now, as the fleet made final preparations, Hayes stood in her sick bay, checking supplies with her chief medical officer. "Dr. Kim, what is our capacity for alien patients?" "Unknown, ma'am. We have never treated this species before. I have downloaded all available medical data on Velothi physiology, but it is limited. Do your best. That is all anyone can ask." Across human space, word of the unauthorized mission spread through unofficial channels. On Earth, the families of the Third Fleet received carefully worded messages that their loved ones were deployed on extended patrol. In the outer colonies, veterans of previous conflicts watched the news feeds with interest. At Fleet Command on Luna, Admiral Thompson received a priority message from Terra Prime. As he read the report of Admiral Chen's unauthorized departure, his face remained carefully neutral. His aide waited nervously for his response. "Sir, should we send orders for the fleet to return immediately?" Thompson was quiet for a long moment. He had served with Sarah Chen for 20 years, had watched her make the hard decisions that others could not or would not make. She was one of the finest officers in the fleet, and if she believed this mission was necessary, she probably had good reasons. "Our communication array is experiencing technical difficulties," he said finally. "I am afraid any messages to the Third Fleet will be delayed indefinitely." His aide stared at him. "Sir?" "You heard me, Lieutenant. Technical difficulties. See that they are not resolved until further notice." Meanwhile, the Third Fleet reached the edge of the Terra Prime system and jumped to hyperspace. The journey to New Serenity would take them through unexplored regions of space, far from any human outpost or supply depot. They were truly on their own. In his ready room, Admiral Chen reviewed the personnel files of her fleet commanders. These were men and women forged in the crucible of human conflict, leaders who had learned that sometimes the only way to save lives was to take them. They understood that war was not a game of chess played by gentlemen, but a brutal struggle where victory went to whoever was willing to pay the highest price. Captain Rodriguez had earned her command by holding the line at Proxima Station when rebel forces outnumbered her 10-1. She had kept fighting even after her ship lost main power, directing the defense from auxiliary command until reinforcements arrived. Commander Park had led the assault on the rebel fortress at Kepler 442, personally leading the boarding party that captured the enemy commander. He had taken a plasma rifle bolt to the chest during the fighting, but refused medical attention until the objective was secured. These were not the polished officers who served on diplomatic missions or ceremonial postings. These were warriors, shaped by humanity's long history of violence and conflict. They understood that sometimes mercy meant being merciless to those who threatened the innocent. As the fleet traveled through hyperspace, the crew members made their own preparations. In the armories, weapons were checked and rechecked. In the medical bays, trauma kits were prepared for casualties. In the chapels, services were held for men and women who knew they might not survive the coming battle. On the Indomitable, Sergeant Major Torres gathered his Marines in the briefing room. These were the men and women who would board enemy ships if the opportunity arose, who would fight hand-to-hand in the corridors of alien vessels. "We do not know what these HFY look like up close," he told them. "We do not know their biology, their psychology, or their fighting methods. What we do know is that they kill civilians for food. That makes them monsters in my book." A young Marine raised his hand. "Sergeant Major, what if their ships are not compatible with human life support?" Torres grinned. "Then we hold our breath, son. We have done it before." The fleet pushed through hyperspace at maximum speed, their drives straining at the edge of safe operating parameters. Every hour counted now. Every minute could mean the difference between arriving to save a colony or arriving to avenge it. In the communications center of the Resolute, technicians monitored the emergency frequencies, hoping for updates from New Serenity. What they heard was increasingly desperate. The Velati were still broadcasting, but their messages had changed. Instead of requests for military assistance, they were now sending final transmissions to loved ones on other worlds, recording their last words for families they would never see again. Admiral Chen listened to these messages with growing determination. The Velati sounded so much like humans in their final moments, clinging to hope even as death approached. They spoke of their children, their dreams, their regrets. They were not alien monsters or faceless statistics. They were people, fighting for their lives while the galaxy watched and did nothing. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "Increase speed to maximum sustainable burn. I do not care if we burn out every drive in the fleet. We will not arrive too late." The fleet responded, pushing their engines beyond safe limits. Drive signatures flared brighter as captains squeezed every bit of speed from their ships. Warning. Lights flashed on engineering consoles as systems operated at the edge of failure. Nobody complained. Nobody suggested they slow down to preserve their equipment. These were humans, and humans had always understood that some things were worth breaking your tools to accomplish. Behind them, the civilized species of the galaxy continued their debates, their committee meetings, their careful calculations of cost and benefit. They spoke of New Serenity in past tense, as if the colony had already fallen. Ahead of them lay a battle that would determine not just the fate of 800,000 Velati, but the future relationship between humanity and the galaxy. Humans did not know it yet, but they were about to announce themselves to the universe in the most dramatic way possible. They were coming, and they were bringing everything they had. The alarms in New Serenity's command center had been screaming for 6 hours straight. Administrator Zeflin had turned off the sound, but the red lights continued to flash, painting everything in the color of blood and death. "Administrator," Commander Veltar said quietly, "the last orbital platform has gone silent. The Serene Hope reports she is down to emergency power only. Captain Lindai estimates they have perhaps 1 hour of combat capability remaining." Zeflin nodded without taking her eyes from the tactical display. The HFY swarm now filled the space around their planet, thousands of bioships moving in perfect coordination. Each vessel pulsed with organic light, like diseased hearts beating in the darkness of space. "Any response to our distress calls?" "The same as before. Sympathy, but no ships." On the main display, the planet's surface showed the approaching darkness. The HFY had begun deploying their consumption pods, organic dropships that would carry the hive's ground forces to begin the harvest. In 12 hours, every living thing on New Serenity would be dead or worse. "Administrator, the communications officer called out suddenly. "I am detecting multiple hyperspace signatures at the edge of the system." Zeflin felt her heart skip. "How many ships?" "Difficult to tell. The signatures are unusual, not like any registered in our databases." The officer's voice carried a note of confusion. "These are not Galactic Council vessels, ma'am. The energy patterns are completely unknown." On her own bridge, Captain Lindai of the Serene Hope watched her long-range sensors with growing amazement. 37 ships had just dropped out of hyperspace, and they were burning hard toward New Serenity at a speed that seemed almost reckless. "Captain," her sensor operator reported, "the lead vessel is attempting to communicate. They are broadcasting on standard emergency frequencies, but the language is not in our database. Put it through the universal translator," Lindai ordered. A moment later, a harsh alien voice filled the bridge. The words were stilted and strangely pronounced, as if the speaker was not used to their language protocols. "Valathi colony, this is Admiral Chen of the Terran Fleet. We received your distress call. We are here to help." Terran Fleet? Lindai had never heard of the Terrans. She quickly accessed the galactic database while her crew worked to establish communication. "No records found," her information officer reported. "There is no species called Terrans in any galactic registry. No diplomatic contact, no trade agreements, nothing." "Captain," her tactical officer interrupted, "you need to see this. I have detailed scans of the approaching fleet. The tactical display updated, showing the configuration of the unknown ships." Lindai stared in disbelief. Every single vessel was clearly a warship, bristling with weapons that seemed oversized for their hulls. There were no hospital ships, no evacuation transports, no diplomatic vessels. This was a battle fleet, pure and simple. "Are they coming to attack us?" someone asked. "I do not think so," Lindai said slowly. "Look at their approach vector. They are positioning themselves between us and the Kethvar swarm." The communication channel crackled again. "Valathi ships, this is Admiral Chen. We are deploying to defensive positions. Please clear the combat area and prepare to assist with civilian evacuation if necessary." Lindai keyed her own transmitter. "Admiral Chen, this is Captain Lindai of the Valathi Defense Force. Are you really here to help us?" There was a pause. Then the alien voice responded with what might have been amusement. "Captain, we came 37 light years in 3 days to get here. We did not make the trip for the scenery." In the New Serenity Command Center, chaos reigned as everyone tried to process what was happening. The unknown fleet had arranged itself in a battle formation that looked nothing like standard galactic doctrine. Instead of the careful defensive positioning that civilized species preferred, these ships were spread in an aggressive attack pattern. "Administrator," Veltar said in amazement. "They are actually going to fight the Kethvar. A fleet we have never heard of is about to engage one of the most dangerous forces in the galaxy to save people they do not even know." Zeflin opened the communication channel herself. "Admiral Chen, this is Administrator Zeflin. I must warn you, the Kethvar swarm consists of over 2,000 bioships. They have never been defeated in open battle. Your fleet is much smaller than theirs." The response came back immediately, and this time Zeflin was certain she heard laughter in the alien's voice. "Administrator, where we come from, bad odds just make the victory more interesting." Aboard the Resolute, Admiral Chen stood on her bridge, studying the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The Kethvar swarm was exactly as described, a massive collection of organic ships that moved like a living organism. They were beginning to react to the human fleet's arrival, turning to face this new threat. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "the enemy is changing formation. They are moving to intercept us." "Good. That means they are not attacking the planet." Chen opened the fleet communication channel. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We have traveled a long way to be here, and I intend to make it count. The enemy outnumbers us 5-1, but they have never fought humans before. Show them what that means." Responses crackled back from every ship in the fleet. "Ready to engage, Admiral. Standing by for orders. Let's show these bugs what real predators look like." On the Defiant, Commander Park addressed his crew one final time before battle. "Today we fight not for territory, not for resources, not for politics. We fight for the simple idea that when innocent people call for help, someone should answer. The Kethvar think they can consume this world unopposed. Let us prove them wrong." The first contact came when a group of Kethvar scouts approached the human fleet. These bioships were smaller than the main force, designed for reconnaissance and harassment. They moved with organic grace, their living hulls shifting and adapting as they flew. The scout ships expected the standard galactic response: careful maneuvering, long-range probing attacks, gradual escalation. Instead, 3 human destroyers broke formation and charged straight at them at maximum acceleration. "All ships," Admiral Chen's voice carried across the fleet. "Weapons free. Show them how humans say hello." The first exchange of fire lit up the space between the fleets. The Keithavar bioships fired streams of corrosive plasma that could eat through standard hull plating in seconds. The human ships responded with kinetic rounds, missile volleys, and particle beams that painted the darkness in brilliant colors. One of the Keithavar scouts managed to score a direct hit on the destroyer Courageous, tearing a massive hole in her forward hull. Any civilized species would have withdrawn the damaged ship for repairs. Instead, the Courageous accelerated toward the enemy formation, her captain's voice clear over the communication channels. Damage control reports we can still fight. All weapons operational, continuing the attack. The Keithavar hive mind processed this information with something approaching confusion. The damaged ship should have retreated. Its crew should have prioritized survival over combat effectiveness. This behavior did not match any known species profile. Captain Rodriguez watched from her position on the Indomitable as the main Keithavar force began moving toward the human fleet. The enemy ships were beautiful in their own terrifying way, flowing through space like schools of deadly fish. Captain, her weapons officer reported, "We have target lock on the lead bioship. Range closing to optimal firing distance. Hold fire until we are in point-blank range," Rodriguez ordered. "Let them get close. Let them think they know what we are." The Keithavar formation approached with confidence. They had consumed hundreds of worlds, faced dozens of different species. Every encounter followed the same pattern. Initial resistance followed by careful withdrawal when casualties mounted, then eventual surrender or evacuation. These new aliens would be no different. Their ships were smaller, their formation was aggressive but unsustainable, and they were hopelessly outnumbered. The hive mind calculated that victory would be achieved within 6 standard hours. The Keithavar had no concept of the human military tradition that said the mission comes first, the crew second, and yourself last. They could not understand a species that viewed acceptable losses not as a percentage of forces, but as whatever it takes to win. Admiral Chen watched the enemy formation close to within optimal range. Around her, the bridge crew worked with calm efficiency, the product of years of training and combat experience. They had faced impossible odds before, at Proxima, at Kepler 442, at a dozen other battles where human determination had triumphed over superior numbers. "All ships," she said quietly into her communicator, "commence attack. Target their command vessels first. Show no mercy." The human fleet opened fire with everything they had, the space between the formations filled with missiles, energy beams, and kinetic projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed. The Keithavar bioships responded with their own weapons, streams of organic plasma and living torpedoes that sought out enemy ships like hunting animals. The first few minutes of battle followed standard patterns. Ships maneuvered for advantage. Weapons exchanged fire at long range. Shields and armor absorbed damage. The Keithavar began to relax, confident that this would be like every other engagement. The destruction of the Valiant sent shockwaves through both fleets, but for very different reasons. The Keithavar swarm recoiled in confusion, their hive mind struggling to process what it had just witnessed. In their 1,000-year history of consumption, no prey species had ever deliberately sacrificed valuable ships in ramming attacks. The human fleet, however, responded with grim determination. Captain Williams had bought them a precious few minutes of chaos in the enemy formation, and they intended to use every second of it. "All ships advance to close range," Admiral Chen ordered. "Make every shot count. Williams just showed us the way." The human fleet surged forward, abandoning the careful long-range engagement that galactic doctrine demanded. Instead, they drove straight into the heart of the Keithavar formation, where their smaller, more maneuverable ships could do the most damage. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Rodriguez watched her tactical display with the eyes of a predator. Her destroyer was built for close-range combat, bristling with plasma cannons and torpedo tubes designed for ship-to-ship fighting at point-blank range. "Captain," her weapons officer called out, "massive bioship approaching from starboard. Looks like some kind of command vessel." Rodriguez studied the approaching enemy. The Keithavar ship was 3 times the size of her destroyer, its organic hull covered in weapon pods that pulsed with bioluminescent light. It moved with the fluid grace of a living thing, adjusting its course to bring maximum firepower to bear. "Helm, bring us about to intercept. All weapons target their command structure." She opened the ship-wide communication channel. "All hands, this is the captain. We are about to engage a superior enemy at close range. Remember your training. Remember why we are here. Make every shot count." The 2 ships closed on each other like ancient knights charging with lances. The Keithavar bioship opened fire first, streams of corrosive plasma that splashed against the Indomitable's shields in brilliant cascades of energy. Rodriguez felt her ship shudder under the impact, but her shields held. "Return fire. All weapons," she ordered. The Indomitable erupted in light as every weapon system fired at once. Plasma cannons sent bolts of superheated matter into the enemy hull, while torpedo tubes launched self-guided missiles that sought out weak points in the bioship's organic armor. The Kethavar vessel staggered under the assault, its living hull rippling as it tried to adapt to the damage. But the human weapons were designed to kill, not to capture or disable. They tore through the bioship's defenses with brutal efficiency. "Direct hit on their command section," the weapons officer reported. "Enemy vessel is losing power. Press the attack," Rodriguez ordered. "Do not give them time to recover." Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out as human ships engaged the Kethavar at ranges that would have been considered suicidal by galactic standards. The destroyer Thunderbolt fought 3 enemy scouts simultaneously, her captain using his ship's superior acceleration to stay ahead of their plasma streams while raking them with return fire. The heavy cruiser Defiant had taken on one of the largest bioships in the swarm, a massive creature that could have swallowed her whole. But Commander Park refused to be intimidated by size. He ordered his ship to target the enemy's weapon clusters, systematically destroying the bioship's ability to fight back. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "their hull is regenerating. The damage we inflicted 5 minutes ago is already healing." Park smiled grimly. "Then we will just have to hit them faster than they can heal. All batteries, continuous fire. Do not let up for even a second." The Defiant's main guns began a steady bombardment that lit up space with constant flashes of energy. Each shot tore chunks from the bioship's hull, while follow-up volleys prevented the organic matter from regenerating. It was a tactic of pure aggression, burning through ammunition at an unsustainable rate. But it worked. The massive bioship began to lose structural integrity, its hull failing faster than it could repair itself. Within minutes, the creature was dead, its light fading as the hive mind's control was severed. Not every human ship was so fortunate. The destroyer Fearless took a direct hit from a Kethavar acid cannon, the corrosive stream eating through her hull like it was paper. Her captain, Commander Walsh, watched his ship die around him but refused to surrender. "All hands abandon ship," he ordered over the intercom. "This is not a drill. Get to the escape pods now." As his crew evacuated, Walsh remained on the bridge, with his senior officers, keeping the ship's weapons firing until the very last moment. When the Fearless finally exploded, she took 2 enemy scouts with her. But the most shocking moment came when the marine assault transport Leatherneck did something that no civilized species had ever attempted. Instead of engaging the enemy at range, Captain Torres brought his ship alongside a medium-sized bioship and extended docking clamps. "All Marines prepare for boarding action," Torres announced. "We are going inside." The idea of boarding a Kethavar bioship was beyond suicidal. The creature's interiors were filled with corrosive atmosphere that could dissolve standard equipment in minutes. The corridors were organic tunnels that could shift and change at will. The defenders were part of a hive mind that felt no fear, no pain, and no mercy. Sergeant Major Collins led the first boarding party, his Marines equipped with sealed combat armor and breathing apparatus designed for hostile environments. They cut through the bioship's hull with plasma torches and dropped into the alien vessel's nightmare interior. The corridors were like being inside a living stomach, walls that pulsed with organic light, and floors that shifted under their feet. The air was thick with acidic vapor that would have killed them in seconds without their protection. "Move fast," Collins ordered his team. "Find the command node and destroy it." The Marines advanced through the bioship's interior, fighting past defenders that were more like antibodies than soldiers. The Kethavar creatures were adapted for life inside their ships, pale and elongated with multiple limbs that ended in razor-sharp claws. But the Marines were human, and humans had been fighting in hostile environments for their entire history. They moved with practiced coordination, covering each other's advance and dealing death with brutal efficiency. "Found it," Private Harrison called out, pointing to a massive organic structure that pulsed with bioluminescent light. "That has to be the command node." Collins nodded and armed his demolition charges. "Everyone back. This is going to be messy." The explosion tore through the bioship's nervous system, severing its connection to the hive mind. The creature died instantly, its lights fading as its organic systems shut down. Admiral Chen watched the battle unfold from her bridge, feeling a mixture of pride and sorrow as she saw her ships and crews fighting with the kind of desperate courage that only humans seemed capable of. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and operating far from any support, but they refused to give up. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we are receiving a transmission from the HFY command ship. They want to negotiate." Chen was surprised. The HFY had never been known to negotiate with their prey. They simply consumed everything in their path and moved on to the next world. "Put them through," she ordered. The main screen flickered, and a hideous alien face appeared. The HFY commander was a nightmare of organic technology, more machine than creature, with multiple eyes that glowed with malevolent intelligence. "Human fleet," the alien hissed in broken galactic standard. "You fight with madness. Your species is damaged, broken. You destroy your own ships, you send warriors into acid death. This is not how civilized prey behaves." Chen smiled coldly. "You are right. We are not civilized prey. We are predators just like you. The difference is that we hunt to protect, not to consume." "Impossible," the HFY replied. "All species value individual survival above mission, objectives. All creatures flee when faced with certain death. This is universal law." "Then you have never met humans before," Chen said. "We are the species that charges machine gun nests to save our friends. We are the people who fly burning aircraft away from populated areas. We are the creatures who run into burning buildings to save strangers." The alien's eyes widened as it processed this information. "Your species is insane." "Maybe," Chen agreed. "But we are the insane species that just destroyed a quarter of your swarm. How many worlds have you consumed without resistance? How many civilizations have you devoured while they begged for mercy from people who would not come?" The HFY commander was silent for a long moment. Around the command ship, the swarm was pulling back, abandoning their attack formation for the first time in centuries. "What do you want?" the alien finally asked. Chen's smile turned predatory. "I want you to leave. I want you to take your swarm and go back where you came from. I want you to remember this day, and I want you to remember that humanity is watching. And if we refuse," Chen gestured to the tactical display, where her remaining ships were forming up for another attack. Half her fleet was gone, but the survivors showed no sign of retreat. "Then we keep fighting until one of us is extinct. Your choice." The HFY commander stared at her for a long moment. Then the transmission cut off. Within minutes, the swarm began moving away from New Serenity, withdrawing to the edge of the system before jumping to hyperspace. 3 days after the battle, the space around New Serenity looked like a graveyard. Debris from destroyed ships drifted in slow orbits around the planet, a mixture of human steel and HFY organic matter that would serve as a monument to one of the most unlikely victories in galactic history. Admiral Chen stood in the observation deck of the Resolute, watching recovery teams search for survivors among the wreckage. They had found more than she had dared hope for. The escape pods from the destroyed ships had been designed to human standards, built to keep their occupants alive in the hostile environment of space, far longer than most species thought necessary. "Admiral," Captain Hayes of the medical frigate, Mercy approached with her latest report. "We have recovered 437 survivors from the destroyed vessels. Most will make full recoveries, though some will require extended treatment." Chen nodded, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. 437 people who would go home to their families instead of being listed among the dead. In the larger scheme of things, it was a small number, but to her, each life saved justified the entire mission. "What about the Velati casualties?" she asked. "Surprisingly light," Hayes replied. "The colonists had prepared well for a siege. Most were in underground shelters when the HFY deployed their consumption pods. We estimate fewer than 1,000 civilian casualties, out of 800,000. Through the observation port, Chen could see the lights of New Serenity's cities beginning to shine again as the colonists emerged from their shelters. The planet would live, and the lives of nearly 1 million people would continue because 37 human ships had answered a call for help, but the aftermath of the battle was proving almost as complex as the fight itself. Word of humanity's intervention had spread across the galaxy with shocking speed, and the reactions were varied and intense. The first to arrive were the reporters. News ships from a dozen different species had jumped into the system within hours of the battle's end, their crews desperate to document the story of the unknown aliens who had defeated the unstoppable HFY swarm. Chen had reluctantly agreed to interviews, knowing that humanity's introduction to the galaxy needed to be handled carefully. The questions they asked revealed how little the galactic community understood about human nature. Admiral Chen asked the Morvani reporter, her whiskers twitching with nervous energy. Our military experts are baffled by your tactics. Why did your ships engage the enemy at such close range? Standard doctrine calls for long-range bombardment to minimize casualties. Chen had looked at the alien reporter with something approaching pity. Close range is where our weapons are most effective. We fight to win, not to minimize risk. But the casualties, the reporter pressed. You lost nearly half your fleet. Surely such losses are unacceptable. The only unacceptable outcome would have been the death of 800,000 innocent civilians. Chen had replied firmly. We knew the cost going in. We paid it willingly. The second wave of visitors were the diplomats. Representatives from every major galactic power arrived in heavily escorted ships, clearly nervous about meeting these new players, who had appeared from nowhere with such devastating effect. High Counselor Mordain of the Morvani was the first to request a formal meeting. Chen received him in the Resolute's conference room, noting how the elderly alien seemed to shrink away from the battle damage visible through the viewport. Admiral Chen, Mordain began formally, I come bearing the gratitude of the Galactic Council for your intervention in this crisis. However, I must express concern about your methods. The destruction you and the Kethvar inflicted on each other was quite shocking by civilized standards. Chen studied the alien diplomat carefully. Counselor, with respect, where were your civilized standards when the Kethvar were preparing to consume this world? I heard your people's response to Administrator Zeflin's plea for help. Sympathy but no ships. Mordain's whiskers drooped. You must understand the Kethvar have never been successfully opposed. Every species that has tried to fight them has been destroyed. We have learned to avoid them, to evacuate threatened worlds rather than risk military confrontation. And how many worlds have been abandoned using that strategy? Chen asked quietly. The silence stretched between them for long moments. Finally, Mordain spoke again. 47 confirmed worlds in the past 2 centuries. Millions of lives lost because we could not save them. Chen leaned forward. Counselor, in human space, we have a saying. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. You and your allies are good people, but you have been doing nothing for too long. The meetings with other species followed similar patterns. The Ashanthi praised humanity's courage while questioning their sanity. The Kethalorians marveled at human technology while expressing horror at their willingness to use it. The Zenkari offered trade agreements while nervously asking about humanity's territorial ambitions. But the most significant meeting was with Administrator Zeflin herself. She had requested permission to come aboard the Resolute personally, to thank the humans who had saved her world. Chen met her in the shuttle bay, noting how the Velothi administrator moved with difficulty. The stress of the siege had clearly taken its toll on her health, but her large eyes were bright with gratitude and determination. Admiral, Zeflin said, her voice thick with emotion, I have come to offer you the formal gratitude of the new Serenity Colony, but words seem inadequate for what you have done. Administrator, we did what anyone should have done, Chen replied. We answered a call for help. No, Zeflin said firmly. What you did was extraordinary. My people broadcast our distress to 47 different species. 46 of them offered sympathy and excuses. Only humanity offered ships and lives. She paused, studying Chen's face intently. I have been researching your species since the battle ended. The galactic databases contain very little information about humanity, but what I have found is illuminating. You are a young species, barely emerged from your home system. You have no galactic territories, no established trade routes, no political alliances. Yet you crossed 37 light years to fight for people you had never met. Chen nodded. That is correct. Why? Zeflin asked simply. What did you gain from this sacrifice? What strategic advantage did saving New Serenity provide for humanity? Chen considered the question carefully. It was one that Earth Command would certainly ask when they learned about the unauthorized mission. What strategic benefit had been gained by risking an entire fleet to save an alien colony? Administrator, she said finally, in human philosophy, there are some things that do not require strategic justification. Some actions are taken not because they benefit us but because they are right. Protecting the innocent from those who would harm them is one of those things. Zeflin stared at her for a long moment. Your species is either very wise or very foolish, Admiral. Perhaps both. Perhaps... Chen agreed with a slight smile. The Velothi administrator reached into her robes and withdrew a small crystalline object that pulsed with soft light. This is a memory crystal, containing the complete history of our people, our science, our culture, our achievements and failures. I offer it to humanity as a gift of gratitude and friendship. Chen accepted the crystal carefully, feeling its warmth through her gloves. Administrator, this is incredibly generous, but we did not fight for payment or reward. I know, Zeflin replied. That is precisely why you deserve it. My people have learned something important from this experience, Admiral. We have learned that courage is not the absence of fear, but action in spite of it. We have learned that sometimes the most civilized response is to fight. Over the following days, as the human fleet prepared for the long journey home, the full implications of their actions began to become clear. Reports arrived from across the galaxy, telling of other species' reactions to the Battle of New Serenity. The Kethvar swarm, for the first time in recorded history, had altered their expansion pattern. Instead of moving systematically from one world to the next, they were now avoiding areas where human ships had been detected. The hive mind had apparently decided that humanity represented a threat worth avoiding. More significantly, other species were beginning to reassess their own military doctrines. The Ashanti had quietly begun upgrading their defensive fleets. The Zenkari were developing new weapons based on preliminary scans of human technology. Even the peaceful Morvani were discussing the possibility of creating their own rapid response forces. On Earth, the reaction to news of the battle was mixed. Earth Command was furious about the unauthorized deployment, but public opinion was overwhelmingly supportive. Admiral Chen and her fleet were being hailed as heroes, with recruitment centers reporting a massive surge in volunteers wanting to join the Deathworld fleet. The term had originated from a Kethalorian news report that referred to humanity as the Deathworlders who answered the call. It was meant as an insult, a reference to Earth's harsh environment and humanity's violent history, but humans had embraced the term with typical perversity, wearing it as a badge of honor.